Head rush. Standing up too fast from a period of rest often triggers a sudden, disorienting blackout. One moment, the body is at ease on a couch, and the next, the entire world vanishes into a dark, swirling blur. The head feels momentarily disconnected from the torso, while the hands reach for a wall to maintain stability. This phenomenon occurs because gravity wins a brief but decisive tug-of-war against the circulatory system. It pulls a significant volume of blood down into the lower extremities before the vascular walls can constrict. Consequently, the brain suffers a momentary deficit in its primary oxygen supply. Normally, the autonomic nervous system is a master of precision. It instantly tightens blood vessels and bumps the heart rate to shove that blood back up to the skull. But sometimes the biological response is slow on the draw due to dehydration or low caloric intake. The most staggering reality is that even a 2% drop in body fluid can significantly lag these neurological response times. This turns a simple physical movement into a momentary internal crisis for the brain. If this happens every single time, it might signal chronic blood pressure issues or low iron that require a professional medical evaluation. Eyelid twitch. A frantic, rhythmic flickering of the eyelid can feel like a pulsating strobe light to the person experiencing it. Known medically as myokymia, these involuntary microspasms occur when the nerves controlling the ocular muscles become overstimulated. While the sensation feels intense enough to be distracting, these movements are almost always invisible to everyone else standing just a few feet away. Common triggers include excessive caffeine, chronic sleep deprivation, and prolonged exposure to digital screens. These factors push the nervous system to its functional limit, causing the nerves to fire erratic electrical signals. The twitching is essentially the body's way of demanding a period of rest and sensory reduction. Notably, a persistent twitch that refuses to subside is often a direct alarm for a magnesium deficiency, a mineral responsible for over 300 biochemical reactions that most adults lack. Without sufficient magnesium, the nerves remain in a state of hyperexcitability, firing without a clear command. In the vast majority of cases, the twitching is a harmless but annoying signal from the autonomic nervous system. It typically resolves on its own once the underlying fatigue or overstimulation is addressed. Heartburn. The human stomach is a biological furnace containing hydrochloric acid strong enough to dissolve metal, protected only by a specialized thick mucus lining. However, the 10-inch esophagus sitting directly above it lacks this defensive shield, making it vulnerable to chemical burns. Heartburn occurs when the circular valve at the top of the stomach, the lower esophageal sphincter, fails to maintain a tight seal, allowing searing acid to splash upward into the chest cavity. This creates a sharp, burning sensation that can mimic the feeling of a cardiac event, despite having no connection to the heart itself. Common habits like lying down immediately after a heavy meal or consuming irritants like spicy food and coffee can relax this vital valve. A critical health factor is that if this acid reflux occurs more than twice a week, it is classified as actual reflux disease, which can physically remodel and damage esophageal tissue over time. Managing this condition often involves simple behavioral shifts, such as avoiding food within 3 hours of sleep and keeping the head slightly elevated to use gravity as a natural barrier against acid movement. Globus sensation. The persistent feeling of a lump or ball stuck in the throat is a common yet misunderstood phenomenon. Despite the vivid sensation of a physical obstruction, the airway remains completely clear. This is known as globus sensation, a masterpiece of sensory misinterpretation by the brain. It is frequently triggered by the same muscle tension that affects the shoulders and neck during periods of high stress. When these throat muscles clench involuntarily, the nervous system sends signals that the brain translates into the presence of a foreign object. The most striking aspect of this condition is the anxiety loop. Focusing on the perceived lump causes further muscle tension, making the phantom object feel significantly larger. In some cases, microscopic amounts of acid reflux reaching the upper throat can irritate the tissue, further tricking the brain into perceiving a blockage. This creates a cycle where the worry about the sensation actually fuels the physical symptoms. Unlike a true medical emergency, this feeling is often harmless and typically vanishes the moment the person stops perceiving it as a threat. Brain freeze. Consuming a massive bite of ice cream or a large sip of a frozen slushie can trigger a sudden stabbing pain in the forehead that feels like an ice pick between the eyes. Known by the aggressive medical name sphenopalatine ganglioneuralgia, this phenomenon is a fascinating display of biological drama occurring right behind the face. When extreme cold hits the roof of the mouth, it causes the local blood vessels to rapidly constrict to conserve heat. In a desperate attempt to protect the brain, the body immediately dilates those same vessels to rush warm blood back in. This violent, rapid dilation fires pain receptors that send signals through the trigeminal nerve, the same nerve involved in severe migraines and cluster headaches. Because the mouth triggers the signal, but the forehead feels the impact. This is a classic case of referred pain, where the nervous system essentially misreports the location of the emergency to your conscious mind. The stabbing sensation usually vanishes in about 30 seconds as temperatures stabilize and the vascular system recalibrates. To stop the process instantly, pressing the tongue flat against the roof of the mouth helps warm the area and reset the nerve signals. Precordial catch syndrome. Sitting completely relaxed, only to be met with a sharp, localized stabbing pain in the chest, can be a terrifying experience. This sensation often intensifies when attempting to take a deep breath, leading to the fear of a cardiac event. However, this is almost always precordial catch syndrome, a harmless condition involving a briefly irritated nerve or a minor cramp in the intercostal muscles. It is exceptionally common in teenagers and young adults, lasting anywhere from 30 seconds to a few minutes. Unlike actual heart issues, the pain is extremely specific to one spot and does not spread. The pain resolves on its own without medical intervention. Paradoxically, the most effective way to eliminate this pain is to ignore the survival instinct and take one slow, deliberate, deep breath. This expansion often pops the irritation away like cracking a knuckle, providing instant relief. While it feels like a life-threatening crisis, it has absolutely nothing to do with the heart. Only if the pain is dull, spreading, or accompanied by dizziness should it be treated as a serious medical situation. For most, it is simply a dramatic, benign quirk of the nervous system. Pins and needles. Falling asleep on an arm or sitting awkwardly on a leg often results in a swarm of 1,000 tiny attacking needles. This tingling, buzzing sensation is the physical manifestation of a nerve waking up after a period of intense compression. When a limb is pressed, the nerve stops sending clear signals, and the brain begins receiving garbled nonsense that it interprets as this static-like tingling. Once the pressure is lifted, the nerve fires a barrage of signals to regain its act, creating the recalibration period we recognize as pins and needles. While usually a dramatic reaction to a bad sleeping position, persistent tingling without an obvious cause can be a vital warning sign of a B12 deficiency or high blood sugar damaging the nerves. B12 is essential for maintaining the protective sheath around nerves, and without it, the signals remain permanently disrupted. Most random episodes pass within seconds to minutes, once the blood flow and nerve conductivity return to normal. Chronic, unexplained tingling in the hands or feet is the body's way of communicating a deeper, physiological issue like carpal tunnel or nerve damage. Pandiculation. There is a specific demanding urge to stretch where the arms go up and the back arches, often accompanied by an involuntary noise. This is far more than a simple muscle stretch. It is a sophisticated system reboot performed by the nervous system known as pandiculation. When the body remains in one position for too long, muscles stiffen and the sensory feedback to the brain becomes stale. This act sends a massive burst of fresh information through every neural connection, reactivating muscle spindles and pushing oxygenated blood into the tissues. This biological reset is so essential that nearly every vertebrate animal on Earth, from house cats to dogs, performs it instinctively every time they transition from rest to activity. Humans often suppress this honest signal because of social norms requiring us to sit still, but ignoring it can lead to chronic stiffness. The euphoric relief felt afterward is the brain successfully recalibrating its internal map of the body's physical limits. Listening to this urge is one of the simplest ways to refresh the neurological system and maintain flexibility throughout the day. Hypnic jerk. Falling into sleep should be a seamless transition. But for nearly 70% of the population, that drift is violently interrupted by a sudden full-body jolt. This startling experience, known as a hypnic jerk, often feels like stepping off a curb that isn't there or falling through the mattress. The leading neurological theory suggests a fascinating miscommunication between the brain and the muscular system. As the body relaxes into a deep state of rest, the brain misinterprets the rapid drop in muscle tone as a literal fall from a height. In a desperate attempt to protect the person, the brain fires an emergency electrical signal to contract the muscles and catch the body. This creates a spike in heart rate and an instant return to wide-awake alertness, leaving the person confused and breathless. The most intriguing part is that these jerks are significantly more frequent when the nervous system is already overstimulated by stress, poor sleep hygiene, or excessive caffeine intake. Essentially, the brain is too on guard to realize the body is simply trying to go to sleep. Improving sleep consistency and reducing stimulants after sunset are usually enough to calm these phantom falls. Indigestion. Indigestion often feels like food is simply parked in the stomach, doing nothing for hours. One might experience heaviness, bloating, or general discomfort in the upper abdomen after a meal. The default assumption is that the food was too greasy, but the biological reality is frequently more complex. Eating too fast or failing to chew properly forces the stomach to work significantly harder to break down large chunks. This creates a mechanical backup. Additionally, chronic stress keeps the body in a state that physically shuts down digestion. Contrary to popular belief, that heavy, uncomfortable feeling is frequently caused by stomach acid being too low rather than too high, especially past age 30. Low acid levels mean food sits longer than intended and begins to ferment. This environment creates the very bloating and heavy feeling associated with excess acid. To fix this, experts suggest chewing thoroughly and avoiding flooding meals with liquid, which dilutes essential enzymes. Introducing bitter foods or apple cider vinegar before eating can also help wake up the acid production. Goosebumps. Goosebumps are characterized by tiny muscles at the base of every hair follicle, the erector pili, contracting to pull the hair upright. While this reflex is a useful survival tool for furry animals to trap heat or appear larger to predators, it is essentially a piece of old software running on bald human skin. Humans experience these prickles when cold or scared, but the most fascinating trigger is profound emotional stimulation, such as a moving piece of music. This occurs when a specific sound triggers a sudden dopamine surge, prompting the autonomic nervous system to fire a physical response. Scientific studies have revealed that people who regularly get chills from music actually possess structurally different brains, featuring stronger connections between the auditory cortex and emotional processing centers. If a song gives you goosebumps, it is a biological confirmation that your brain is uniquely wired to process sound on a deep emotional level. This evolutionary leftover has transformed from a primitive defense mechanism into a sophisticated bridge between our senses and our feelings. It remains one of the most visible ways the body displays its internal, invisible reactions to the world. Tinnitus. Tinnitus is the experience of a persistent, high-pitched ringing or buzzing that originates from inside the skull rather than the environment. For the 15% to 20% of people who live with this, the silence of a quiet room often makes the sound feel deafening. This occurs because the tiny hair cells in the inner ear, responsible for converting sound waves into electrical signals, have become damaged. When these cells fail, they may send phantom signals, or the brain may create its own internal noise to fill in the gaps of the missing auditory data. The most startling fact about tinnitus is that it is often a phantom sound created entirely by the brain's attempt to recalibrate itself after hearing loss. While noise exposure from concerts or loud headphones is the primary cause, simple factors like earwax buildup or high-dose aspirin can significantly amplify the intensity. Although there is currently no medical cure for most cases, sound therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy can train the brain to ignore the signal. If these explanations helped you understand your body's strange signals, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more health insights. Thank you for watching and taking the first step toward better health literacy.